never slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be.
Hey you guys, okay, I was like literally hoping it was recording already. I was like delayed a tad, but alright you guys, so continuing with the new content that I wanted to bring you guys pertaining towards, legal aspects, laws and regulations, and as I work towards, creating some new content for the DKH legal aid pages. I've got a new video for you guys covering minimum wage laws and regulations. As I stated in the last one, it's one that I made from a decent bit ago, so there wasn't like the modern update of the new minimum wage laws that took place. Let's see, when I was doing some research, I was able to find like the new minimum wage laws in Chicago per se. I'm not sure, like when I saw the update, I wasn't sure if it was like a nationwide thing or if they were doing it in a bunch of different states or so. But from what I was able to find online, in Chicago in particular, which is probably why I got the update about it, they did update the minimum wage. So it's down towards the bottom of it. I'm gonna go through like a decent bit of it. It's a very short section luckily, so bear with me as I go through those, and this should hopefully only be like a 1 to 2-parter. Alright, minimum wage laws and regulations. And as you guys know, as I told you, with looking over at my phone to freaking read through any type of info, I literally have to like look over a tad bit. So if you guys ever if you guys ever see me like looking over or like looking down, I'm either checking my phone to see what my notes are or checking my literal freaking breakdown for the video to read through. So for this one, it's the breakdown that's added on my computer. Alright, so minimum wage laws and regulations. The overview of this states that minimum wage laws establish the absolute lowest hourly rate an employer can legally pay covered workers. And for a lot of these bases, such as what's going to be touched base upon in the newest update, it's set for employers that have a set amount of employees. So for the new minimum wage law that has been added, it's around like $17 per hour, but it's set for employers that have over 4 to 5, I believe, employees or so. So that's going to be that main basis to like kind of be mindful of. So if it's like you're an employer and you have less employees than that, you've got to check the state specific laws that pertain to that, and the basis for what you would have to do to follow through and make sure that your employees are still being paid the minimum wage that is ideal. But there are the major notions to always be mindful of. The federal minimum wage to pay employees is set and has always literally been for like a decent bit, like $7 or so. It's also touch base upon a tad later, so don't mind me for like quoting it. I'm just gonna give you guys like the ballpark dollar freaking amount, not the like changes added to it. And then for the state minimum wage in the state of Illinois, it's at like $15 per hour or so. Employers must comply with federal, state, and local regulations. This is going to set that basis for that federal minimum wage, state minimum wage requirements, and then the local regulations set within a region, such as in Chicago, where it's set at 17, the state is set at 15, and the federal is set at 7. And workers are always entitled to the highest applicable rate. So there is no, going for a low bulge, what was the old rate that we had? Can we offer that? It's like, no, you have to go for the highest applicable rate that you can offer the employees. And it's the minimum wage for that for the payment throughout the local region, state, or in the federal basis, the highest applicable rate that you are going to pay your employees at the federal minimum wage amount. The federal minimum wage provisions are contained in the Fair Labor Standards Act, the FLSA. The federal minimum wage is set at $7.25 per hour. And this one, I was like quoting it without the like cents amount, and it was literally on like the first page where I literally have it set out already. This was effective July 24th, 2009. Many states also have minimum wage laws. Some state laws provide greater employee protections. Employers must comply with both. Now, I remember when I was like working in like I think what was it, when I started working initially, I was like 16 or so. It was like, I believe, my junior year, before I had my junior prom. I was like freaking working. My mom and her fiance were like, go get a job and try like doing something, get some freaking funds, go out and venture and do something. Because at the time I was literally just working with my freaking my brother-in-law, my future brother-in-law, and his business partner who had opened this landscaping company. And like every summer I would work with them. During the winter months, my freaking mom's fiance would help them, and he would like attach the plow little thing to his freaking truck, and we would go out and freaking he would like plow the driveways, and then we would go out and shovel and stuff like that, and then they would pay for the plowing and the freaking shoveling, and then it'd be like this like breakdown of like the payments and stuff. He tried to like take like a reasonable amount, because he was like at the end of the day I own a freaking complex, so I don't want to freaking take all the freaking funds and go I did the plowing, so all the money goes to me. And he would like literally say this at times too, and I was like, what, these are the notions of the moments where I'm like, these are these little tips that you have that I like about you. And then sometimes he'd have moments where it's just like completely ridiculous. But when it came to business, he was somebody that I could see eye to eye with in the handling of business matters. But while working, the minimum wage when I initially started working, when I was like around like 16ish or so, I think it was around like maybe $7.25ish to like $7.50ish or so. And then I remember when I was like working for a decent bit, there was like an announcement, I think like a few months or so into me like working, I think it was like it came during like my senior year or so, where the minimum wage went up, and then it went from like $7.25 to, or like $7.50 to like I think like maybe like $7.75 or like $8.25ish or so. And we were like, whoa, okay. And then my bosses were like cheering and freaking bringing in the good vibes, and they're like, we're upping everybody's freaking wages. And I was like, ooh, freaking loving this. I literally just started working and I'm already getting a pay raise. And then I think it ended up bumping up from like $8 an hour to like around like $11 an hour by the time I was in like my freaking freshman year in college. And it was just really freaking interesting to see like how these rates have adjusted throughout the years, and how we've gone from $7.25 per hour as a federal mandated minimum wage to $17 an hour in places such as Chicago, Illinois, with the state minimum being set at $15 an hour. Many states also have minimum wage laws. Some state laws provide greater employee... Okay, I read through that. Sorry, guys. The Fair Labor Standards Act does not provide wage payment collection procedures for an employee's usual or promised wages or commissions in excess of those required by the Fair Labor Standards Act. However, some states do have laws under which such claims, sometimes including fringe benefits, can be filed. So let me see if I can kind of like dig a tad deeper into that one and see if there's anything that I can explain a tad more, because it's worded very like by the books. So let's see. Federal Labor Standards Act does not provide wage payment collection procedures for an employee's usual or promised wages or commissions in excess of those required by the federal. So yeah, it's just basically stating that there's no protectorate in, let's see, payment collections that are aside from the usual and promised wages or commissions. And then for the excess amounts, such as tipped wages, tipped employees oftentimes had different like minimum wage levels set, but I believe there's still the adherence to the state minimum wage level. But then with the tips being added, I've read a few different times where it kind of affects the pay rates that they get, where it's not like it's either like the minimum wage, or it's like the state minimum wage level, or like a tad lower, and then they have the tipped added bonus as the reasoning for it or so. It's something that I would have to I'm probably going to do like a tad bit of research as we're getting to like the 9-minute mark on this one. I'm going to see if I can find it. If I can find anything that ties that in, I'm going to add that into like the final portion of it, so we do have that coverage pertaining towards that. Let's see. Oh, you know what? Actually, it's in the next portion. Tipped employees. So employees may pay a direct cash wage of $2.13 per hour, provided the employees' tips make up the difference to reach the full minimum wage. So they do have that minimum wage protectorate, but they could set their hourly rate to be lower as long as their tipped amount gets them to that full minimum wage amount. Overtime, non-exempt employees must be paid 1.5 times their regular rate for all hours worked over 40 in a single work week. So that protectorate for ensuring that you're getting your overtime pay, and it's something that falls along the lines of 1.5 hour or greater if your employer, offers a tad more for your overtime. As everyone says, overtime is always something that most people will not argue with. If you're willing to pay me more for my time, I'll be there for it. Alright, see you guys for part 2. Alright, you guys, it happened again. I recorded another freaking part. And of course, as I got to the end of it, I went to go freaking save it and go to the next portion because I'd literally gotten to the end of it. I added in the freaking major details and notions, and again, my phone's like literally at like 20% now. Whenever I plan to do the final portions, I'm always like, alright, it's great, perfect timing. My phone battery is probably literally at that freaking point. And then I freaking go over to the next portion to upload it, and then it freaking cancels out, so then I end up freaking recording portions over and freaking over again. My puppy was like barking, she was just not barking, oh my gosh, she was coughing like cray in the freaking background throughout most of it. And it was adorable in itself. I was literally like talking to him about the stuff and tell him I was gonna like go over and pat his back. I typically like pat his back whenever he's like coughing a lot, or if he has like, if he ate something bad or there's something like caught in his freaking throat, I always like pat his back like he's a baby to freaking get it out, and it tends to freaking help and it calms him down. Like when I initially started doing it, he was like, what are you freaking doing? And then as he's gotten older, it's like our go-to. Like he'll literally start like coughing, I'll pop over and then I'll like pat him from the back area, or I'll like pat him directly on his back to get whatever the heck it is out, and it typically helps like get it out of his system. And he's grown to be so adorable, and to get like our typical tendencies in time, it's so adorable. But he's doing better now. He's currently napping. He hasn't had his little like cough / hacking fit in a decent bed. I'm guessing that we probably ate something bad while we were outside. I was working on the car for like an hour and a half-ish. I brought him out. He was playing with his buddy from down the street. Then we brought his mom out for like the last 30 minutes. They had a freaking blast. But with them being out for like an hour and a half, he definitely probably ate something yucky while in the midst of playing with his buddy and running around, freaking just jumping around and freaking chewing on everything. And honestly, it could be from him, running around for so long that he like tired himself out, or freaking, just has like I don't know, maybe like a dry throat or so, because they literally will run around the entire time. Like I was working on the car for like literally an hour and a half as trying to get the freaking security system to turn off, and he literally ran around for the entire time. Like I brought his mom out, she played with him for like I would say maybe a total of like maybe like 5 minutes, and then chilled with me in the car for like most of it while I was working on the freaking car. And then after we finished out, I was freaking getting out of the car, and she was freaking just like ready to go back home. So we brought her home. I threw him on his leash because he is like the one that's like literally always off running and starting an adventure while in the midst of bringing everybody home and like running back and forth. So I had him on his leash. I dropped her back off at home. Then I went to go drop his buddy back off at home, and now we're freaking kicking back and relaxing. But I was like, let's freaking do some content while in the midst, and then I'll troubleshoot with the car later. I reached out to a few mechanics, sent over some messages, so with any luck they'll be able to fix the problem because I am like stumped. I was trying to change the tire, I could not do it. I ended up ordering a battery for my freaking drill because I was like, I'm guessing this is the only way that you can actually do this thing. And then that finally got delivered, but after I ended up finding a mechanic who could actually replace the tire for me. So I've got the new tire on there, and now it's the freaking theft system that's locking the freaking car up, and it's a 1997 Chevy Cavalier, and I have no freaking idea how to do it. So if any of you guys know how to do it, let me freaking know. But let's finish this part out, and with any luck, I'll be able to do this in 3 parts as I planned for at the end of part 2 in the one that I just recorded. So state and local laws, many states and municipalities set minimum wages that exceed the federal minimum. So as with Illinois, the federal minimum wage is set at $7.25 an hour, which would not be conducive for a way of life within a city such as Chicago and throughout the state of Illinois. So the minimum wage is set to combat the rate of living throughout the freaking area, the region, the state, and local areas. Illinois state rate. The Illinois minimum wage was set at $15 per hour before the pay rate increase for workers 18 and older. So as opposed to the rate being set as something that is based on employers who have 4 to 5 employees or more, which I believe it's over 4 or 5 employees, it was set at the basis for the age ranges. Tipped workers in Illinois, employers were able, and this is a past notion also again, employers were, can take a tip rate of up to 40%, meaning the minimum base wage for tipped workers was set at $9 per hour. I believe it's now $11 per hour. Local ordinances, municipalities like the city of Chicago and counties like Cook County have their own minimum wage laws that frequently adjust for inflation. So in adjusting for the price ranges for different goods that are imported and sold throughout the region, and the cost of living, because when I was doing the original recording for the part 2 such, I included the notion as towards the cost of living for apartments or renting houses and stuff like that. For renting houses, for a lot of them, they haven't really changed that much. For apartments, a lot have really adjusted. For a lot of people, they kind of kept them feasible. For many others, they're starting to set the amounts that they require for rent back to the normal amounts, because during the beginning of the pandemic, they were they stayed consistent, I would say, for the first maybe a few months of the first year, and then the first year overall. Then came the notions where they were attempting to oust people that couldn't go to work due to the COVID outbreak, due to getting sick during COVID, losing their jobs, quarantining freaking methods and stuff like that. And in the midst, it really affected a lot of people. We had to set a bunch of laws and regulations to protect people from being evicted from the premises due to not being able to pay their rent due to loss of the job, the effects of the pandemic on them, their families, and so many other aspects. And another notion that I added in there was, from the time of the pandemic through the inflation, in the major inflation moments that we've had throughout our new Great Recession to the current point, we've seen, and I did a ballpark, so let's say rent for a lot of places was set at the minimum amount of $1,000 per month for a 2-bedroom apartment or so. A lot have gone from $1,000 a month to $1,250 a month to $1,400 a month. It's $450 a month-ish or so, and it's a lot for people to literally adjust to, because a lot of those extra wages that have just been added to the adjustment period were things that were used to cover things such as bills, food, other freaking daily essentials throughout our lives, and expenses. And when you start to combat with people's finances, it kind of sets them up for failure. So the major notion as towards the adjustment of the federal minimum wage, or should I say the minimum wage laws throughout the local areas and states, is to ensure that employees are able to live a conducive life and combat the nature of, and I'm sad to say it, but a lot of people, they were greedy business tactics. The cost of, maintaining and having the property didn't go up enough for people to literally go for the rent hikes. It's more of it's like a grab type of flow. It's more of punching a jab at people and then expecting them to not notice, but it's setting people up for failure. So in order to work towards avoiding that and setting our people to be more so ahead of that, we had to increase the minimum wage amounts. Alright, I would love to cover that a tad more as I did when I originally did this one. We're running low on time already, and there are a few more notions before we get to that final part where I was ready to start part 3. Let's see, in areas with local laws, the highest rate, whether federal, state, or local, applies. So if the federal minimum wage was to go from $7.25 an hour to $20 an hour, that would be the local minimum wage that would be most prevalent throughout the nation. That would be the one that would apply as the highest minimum wage rate that everybody would have to adhere to. If your state minimum wage is set to like $20 an hour, all throughout the state, the minimum wage basis that would be the highest and the one that everybody would have to adhere to would be the state minimum wage. And if you're in a local region such as Chicago, as the state minimum wage is set at like, I believe around like maybe I think $15 per hour or so now, the state minimum wage would be set, the local minimum wage would be most prevalent as it is set at $17 per hour. Okay, yeah, so the next portion I was able to cover a tad more, but I can add that into the part 3, and it should still save it from being an extremely long one, as there are only like 2 final freaking portions in it. Should I say maybe 3, but the final portion is basically just a recap. See you guys for part 3 in just a bit. Alright, it happened again. I finished out part freaking 3 where I was recapping the end of part 2, and then it cut out on me again. Or should I say I finished the video, and then when I got to the end of it, it only saved like 46 seconds of it. So then I was like, I can work with that. I'll just, add on to the draft of it and then just finish the rest of it out, because I was telling like a bit of a different freaking breakdown in the beginning. You know what, actually, I think I might have just ended up jumping into it, but it was still like, feasible, worth keeping. Didn't even freaking work in the end of it, so starting over for this final portion, you guys, bear with me. I'm going to try to breeze through it, but there are a bunch of freaking little notions in this one that are like side note notions to break everything down and explain it a bit. So without further ado, let's finish this out. Certain types of work. Okay, so key exemptions and rules. Certain types of workers and employment arrangements have different minimum wage rules. For the youth, teenagers under 18 who work fewer than 650 hours per calendar year have a lower minimum wage in Illinois. So that's the set basis for adhering to child labor laws, and then the set wage basis for the age group and level. Student/learner wages. The FLSA, the Fair Labor Standards Act, allows certificates to be obtained for paying less than the minimum wage to vocational students, interns, student learners, or individuals whose productive capacities are impaired or hindered due to a disability. So student learners, vocational students, interns, or individuals whose functionality happens to be disabled by a disability are set at a lower minimum wage if an employer can obtain a certificate, and it's not to literally hinder them from making a fair wage amount. It's just to lower the wage expenditure, as they are typically students and workers that can't function at that full capacity as others because they are hindered by a disability. So it's set to make sure that their wages are still a conducive manner that falls within the parameters that I would expect kind of fall within the basis of the state minimum wage to the local ordinance minimum wage in the case for Illinois, or it would fall within the basis of ballparking between the federal minimum wage and the state minimum wages, depending on the discrepancies and depending on the certificate's allowance for the discrepancy in the minimum wage amounts paid to the vocational, intern, and student learners, as well as those impaired by disabilities. Administrative, executive, and professional exemptions. So salaried employees who meet specific duties and compensation tests are exempt from both minimum wage and overtime rules. So as you guys know, salaried employees, which would fall within that parameters of people who typically have jobs that are administrative jobs, executive and professional level jobs, have that set rate basis that's agreed upon within their contract of employment, and they are going to be paid upon that salaried basis, as well as have the overtime rules that are explained and stressed within their contract. And for that basis, as they're typically paid more than the minimum wage, they kind of don't have that basis to really adhere to the minimum wage anyways, because they're already paid above that rate, and then they have their set basis to be paid upon as agreed by terms of the contract. Alright, the final 2 notions, and as I'm recording this one on my Samsung, this one should be fine. I typically have no problem recording anything on my Samsung. It's on my iPhone, where it's the first video, perfect without any freaking snags or tips. Second video, I literally have to restart the app, and if I try to record it before restarting the app, it glitches the freaking heck out. And then if I try to do 2 within recording sesh after I restart the app for part 2 to do part 3 ends up glitching out. And for the last one, it cut like the 10-minute video down to like 46 seconds, and I was like, what the heck just freaking happened? And then when I went to freaking go back and check the drafts of it, it was like completely cleared, so I didn't know what the heck was going on with that. For the enforcement, under federal and state law, you are entitled to recover unpaid back wages if you are paid less than the required minimum. So if you're paid less than the required minimum wage for your local area, your state your state minimum wage, or if you're in an area where the federal minimum wage is your set basis for the minimum wage level, and you are paid below the highest minimum wage amount, and you have been getting paid that amount for a decent portion of, or a decent bit of time overall, you're owed and entitled to the backed wages. If your rates have been violated, you can file a complaint with the U.S. Department of Labor, Wage and Hour Division, or your state's Department of Labor. So you can file a report with both. You can file a report with the U.S. Department of Labor, Wages and Hours Division, as well as with your state's Department of Labor. I would say if you are working for an employer that has been paying you below the minimum wage for months and you are owed back wages, report it to both. They will both work to ensure that you get the compensation that you are owed for the hours that you worked and the backed wages that you should have been paid. And don't worry about retaliation from your employer. There are protectorates to protect you from that, and they will ensure that you are able to keep your job and continue working while also getting the compensation that you are owed, and also help our federal and state departments to locate the employers that are breaking the laws and regulations. As of July 1st, 2026, the new minimum wage in Chicago is $17.05 per hour for employers with 4 or more employees. And then again, you guys, I've stated, if any of your employers are violating your minimum wage rights and laws, report it to the U.S. Department of Labor, Wage and Hours Division, and or your state's Department of Labor. And if you are applying for any jobs and you're getting a bunch of scams, be sure to report them. We also have federal agencies that work to handle this stuff and limit it. I literally went through another scam freaking job offer recently. It was from somebody who found me on LinkedIn. They reached out to me via email as they found my email on my account, and they literally sent over this like job offer. It sounded freaking amazing. I was like, oh heck freaking yeah, let's move forward. Then in the midst of it, they were like, we have to just review your resume again. I was like, well, you said my resume was great. You said it was what enticed you to contact me. We were at the point where we were moving forward, and now you're like saying you want to review it. And I was like, all right, well, let's see how that goes. And then she had somebody who was supposed to be reaching out to me. The emails ended up getting lost in my spam folder. I couldn't find them in the midst, so I contacted her and I was like, I haven't had anybody reach out to me. I don't know what you're talking about. She was like, my team member is going to reach out to you, and then she'll talk to you about, revising your resume so we can send it over to our other hiring team, and then we'll get the, situation moving forward from there. And then in the midst of it, she ends up reaching back out to me. She's like, you should have gotten the email. If you haven't gotten it yet, well, we'll have to figure out what's going on. And then I was like, yeah, I haven't gotten it yet. I don't know what the freaking heck is going on. And then in the midst, she would text me back the same email that she sent me before prior, but then added in a notion where she was like, well, now I can do it myself also, but if I do it myself to speed up the process, you're gonna have to purchase this tool, and then I'll use the tool to revise your resume, and then I'll send it over to our other team. And I was like, you know what, that's just screaming scam. If you're asking for money to literally employ somebody, it just screams scam. So I ended up telling her, it's a no-go. I reported her over to one of our federal government freaking branch sites for scams and phishing job offers, and I also reported her LinkedIn account. Make sure that you guys are staying on top of this stuff, because they're going after everybody all over the place. And as you guys know, the job market is already extremely rocky, but with having all of these fake job offers out there, it limits the amount of real jobs that are available to people that people can actually find and apply to. So make sure that you guys are helping us to manage those. Local rates for Chicago and Cook County. Chicago general rates are set at $17.05 per hour for 4+ employees. Chicago tipped workers, their wage is now set at $12.96 per hour. Chicago city contracts, their wage is set at $18.50 per hour. For Cook County, the rate is set at $15.40 per hour non-tipped and $9.25 per hour tipped. So there's a difference of like, let's see, around $3, no, actually for around $2 for each. Actually, no, $3 for the tipped wage rate and $2 for the Chicago general rate to the Cook County rate. For state and federal rates, Illinois state wage remains at $15 per hour statewide. Scheduled increases concluded at this level. And for federal minimum wage, it remains unchanged at $7.25 per hour. Alright, you guys have gotten to the end of this. I'm glad we were able to conclude it within an expedient time frame because I literally have like 10 seconds left. So I'm going to grab my cup. I literally just woke my puppy up doing that. Alright, you guys ready? I will see you in the next one. I love you. I've got plenty of other great videos coming for you. And if you have any ideas, send them over to me. And if not, stay tuned for the new ones. Love you.